Welcome to the Golden Age podcast. I am your host, JP, accompanied by my guest, Roy. And today we're going to talk about our lessons that we've learned so far in terms of finances, at least at 26 years old, right?
Yeah.
So, welcome to the podcast where we usually cover about being financially, mentally, physically, and spiritually healthy. And yeah, so in today's podcast, we're going to go over 5 different segments. So we're going to begin with where we're at right now financially. Then we're going to go into what we wish we knew when we were 18. We're then going to go also into leveraging what we have right now. We're going to share with you guys as well any credit and saving strategies that so far have worked for both of us, given that we actually have been in very different radars, myself being more of an entrepreneur and Roy having more of that 9 to 5 stable job, salary job, which is still pretty good. So kind of give you guys a perspective on each one. And we're gonna just end it also with any advice that we would give ourselves back when we were 18. So go ahead and stay tuned and we'll jump right into it. So we'll start with the quick introduction again. I am your host, JP, and I am a current Navy reservist, entrepreneur. I own my own training business at a local private gym here in San Diego, as well as I used to work for the government, technically still do. We'll cover that a little bit more. But I'm definitely trying to venture off more into the entrepreneurial side of the world. And here next to me is Roy. If you've seen the second episode on this podcast, you definitely know that he is one of my best friends since high school, and he's gone through a crazy transformation physically, but also he's killing it financially. And he is actually working for a company called Dexcom. But I'll let Roy introduce himself a little bit more.
Yeah. Thanks for having me again in your podcast. Happy to be back. And this is definitely a big topic that I think is definitely not really talked about a lot in nowadays. And typically, I think it's something that's very important, especially for parents to talk about, but then also your group, your friend group. I think this is definitely a big topic that, especially for those to surround yourself with people, like-minded people that talk about these important topics because they typically don't teach this stuff in school.
Yeah, 100% agree. They don't teach a lot of this stuff in school. And so, we obviously we met in high school and we've taken different paths. I'm not sure, at least for me, it's not the path that I had imagined at first. One of my goals in high school was to be a professional athlete. Nowhere close.
Injuries.
Yeah,
Blame
we'll say it
injuries.
was injuries, right? Definitely, it wasn't lack of focus and discipline. And so I've kind of ventured off. We followed similar paths because we both went to
High school,
college,
college
right?
together.
We went to USD together. Did our bachelor's there together. I did
Mhm.
my master's there. Roy's honestly just killing it, so he doesn't even need to worry about that yet. But from there, we've definitely gone different paths. So if you want to talk a little bit about the path that you've taken, and diving into our first segment, kind of where we're at right now.
Yeah, most definitely. And I feel like a lot of people around, like finishing college, can definitely relate. Like, you're getting this degree and you definitely want the common norm, the societal norm is you get a job right after graduating. And that's definitely something that I somewhat followed. And especially in my last couple of years of college, really, my main focus was getting internship, putting my foot in the door, trying to get, companies, trying to just get the experience. And I definitely struggled in my first couple, I'd say, instances of trying to get internships, like getting denied, and even summer programs, not gaining the access. And really, it's really just a perseverance of really just continuously applying and putting your door out there. And that's eventually where I landed this job opportunity that I've been with for over 5 years now. And it's definitely a great opportunity and great position for me to really develop myself professionally, but then also have a good, I'd say, foundation financially.
Nice. And what's your role right now at your job?
I'm a data engineer, so I work a lot more in the IT space, more in the data analytics portion of stuff.
Nice. Yeah. And for me, it's kind of funny. Out of college, for me, I ran to go hide for a little bit in boot camp. I left San Diego for a good 4 months. Did boot camp, did A school, most of that was because I didn't have a really like any plans, any job offers after college, just because I personally believe I didn't make make good decisions in terms of, finding internships that were going to give me experience. Because nowadays, like, I bet a lot of you, if you've been applying to jobs and you're watching this, you know that everyone wants experience, and that was something that I never really got, never really found. So my escape was the military, and you know, I did only join the reserve, so that meant I still had to come back home and figure something out. And when I came back home, I didn't work for like a good month, I think, 'cause I was still getting paid active duty pay from the military.
Mhm.
So, uh, and then at one point though, when I stopped getting paid, um, I remember having like $25 left in my bank account, bro. And
The struggle.
I was like, I need to do something. And I happened to be at LA Fitness one day at the gym. I ran into a buddy that was working there, and he got me a job there. And that's kind of that was the beginning of my career in fitness. I started first in sales, and that took me, from one gym, they moved to a different location because they needed someone who spoke Spanish. And that ended up leading me to becoming just a personal trainer because I ended up going back to school, and I just obviously didn't have time to be working full time, especially given the schedule that we were working. I was basically at the gym all day. And from there, the second time in my master's program, I would definitely say I made the most out of that program in terms of getting skills and more knowledge. We had a class where we went to Australia for a couple of weeks and we worked with the company out there. And I also made the most out of the networking events. That's definitely something that I recommend that you guys prepare for is, getting ready to go to networking events and just having meaningful conversations with the different representatives from each company, because that's what helped me land my federal job. I already had nothing written or anything, but I already had a good relationship with the recruiters from the place that I ended up working at. And so when it came time for me to apply, once I was gonna get close to graduation, it was pretty simple. A lot of people for the government, they go on USA Jobs and they'll fill in their application and then hope that they hear back from it. For me, I literally just had to email my resume to directly to the manager and I think a piece of my writing. And the a week later, I had an interview with the panel. And interesting enough, they told me that they would get back to me within like a week or two. I didn't hear anything, and I was like, shoot, well, I guess I didn't get the job. So I emailed them, and the guy was like, oh, no one reached out to you? Like, we actually like wanted to hire you. And I was like, well, no one did reach out to me. That's why I'm asking you, bro. Um, and and yeah, I mean, that was probably not like the route for everyone, but that just comes to show also like, making good connections is very meaningful and important. So that kind of has carried me throughout where I've been right now. I stayed in personal training, but I ended up going to a private gym and really starting my own business from there because as a 1099, as an independent trainer, you're now an owner of your own business. And that has really inspired me to now that I took, I don't know if you guys heard of this, but back when President Trump first came in office, he wanted to get, we'll say, rid of federal workers, right?
Mhm.
And so he offered us, to get paid until the end of September if we resign. And I mean, I was one of the few that said, yeah, I'll do it. And it was funny because I was over in my officer development school. So it was like,
LDS. Yeah.
it didn't really give me a time, like a chance to like think about stuff, to like talk to my supervisor or my manager. I just kind of like, I just said a prayer and I did it, bro.
Mm-hmm.
And so right now I'm going full steam into this entrepreneur stuff, and it's been crazy, ups and downs,
Yeah.
And so I feel like right now, getting to our first talking point about where we are at right now financially, I would say for me at least, my streams of income right now is at least until the end of September. I'm still getting paid by the government every 2 weeks. I got money coming in from the gym, from my clients, and I got money coming in also from some affiliate marketing that I do. Um, and also just my investments that, I have a few dividend paying stocks.
Yeah, that's a good,
That's kind of where I'm at right now. How about
especially
you?
around this age. Yeah, for me, I mean, like I mentioned, the stability of having a corporate job, salaried, consistent pay, but then also depending on the company, and mine specifically, pretty good bonus payouts. So you have some good, I'd say, shopping money. And for me, really, a lot of that I use for savings, but also investment. And that's where, really focusing on your Roth IRA, on individual brokerages account, but then also making sure you have money for emergency funds. That's really where I have my money in. And then, one big thing I'd say in my current state is my credit, leveraging and really developing my good credit. Because I think credit is definitely a big player, especially in America. Because the way I think of credit is really your relationship, and also it's a visibility score ranking of how well are you with your finances. It's comes from credibility, responsibility, but then also how well managed are you in your finances. And that's one thing I definitely leverage and really focused on, especially in my younger of my 20s, really developing a good credit score, and then
What's your
also
credit score right now?
830.
830.
Yeah, around over 800.
I got my
August.
I got my next co-signer here for my next
Uh,
house.
you wish. But that's one thing is the way I view credit, it's really your relationship with money, and whether you're very, I'd say, manageable, but then also I'd say how well you manage your money. And that's one thing I leverage. But then apart from stable income with investments and then emergency funds, that's really where I'd say me personally, I worked hard in the very beginning of my early 20s to make sure that I'm in a good spot right now where I wouldn't say I'm living paycheck to paycheck.
Nice. Yeah. I'd say for me, man, it's been a little like up and down roller coaster. Um, Interesting enough, when I was first getting into the credit card game, credit score was not too bad. At least for not knowing what the heck I was doing, right? I was like in the 750s, 760s, which to me was like nice,
Mhm.
really good credit score, especially for like again, not being very well educated. And I was honestly just applying for credit cards every maybe like 6 months.
Mm.
And just because I would see that I get approved, I'd be like, oh, let's apply for this one. And sure enough, that kind of came to backfire a little bit.
Mhm.
Uh, just because I, you know, did spend money I didn't have, right? And in my head, I was like, well, I'll pay it off. And obviously that started to get kind of out of control at one point, but my credit had never really gone down that much for me to like be, let's say, like alarmed, right?
Concerned.
Concerned or
Yeah.
anything. And yeah, it's been up in the 700s. It's gone down below 600. I'll be like honest with you guys, like last year or from I'd say kind of like I'd say beginning of this year, it was definitely down in the 600s. And not just because I had got a car, but also I think just the balances on my credit cards got a little out of control. And one thing, right, that I noticed was because I wasn't paying down the balance a lot, the banks were actually like decreasing my credit limit.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty. That's
So
bad.
let's just say my credit usage was like it was probably somewhere like around 30, 35%, getting to 40. And I kid you not, bro, like in the span of like 2 months, I would just get emails of like, oh, we did a revision of your credit limit.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
And next thing you know, like they would cut my credit limit by like anywhere from like 1K to like 3K.
really,
Yeah.
jeez. Just
And
to
so that shot up my credit utilization to like
mm,
80%.
yeah, that's really bad.
It was bad. Like I was like, what the?
Yeah. That's why
And
credit is really it's really how well you manage other people's money. Because really
yeah,
credit cards and like loans, they're not your money. And that's why the credit score, I think, in America at least, in the financial situation, where credit score really plays a big role in your finances and your relationship with banks, and really it demonstrates how well you manage other people's money. And if they see that they can trust you with money, that impacts your other relationships with other
100%.
banks.
Also, the other important part about personal credit, and I'll elaborate this a little bit more later, but it will definitely affect how much business credit you can get on later on. If for those of you who are watching that want to get more into running a business or stuff like that, especially like if your business doesn't have much credibility, much time, like your personal credit is going to be very important. So that's something to keep in mind. And also, um, I'd say, well, I'll say this for later, a little lesson for later. Um, Now, for me, aside from my credit, I'd say for a while, I had a pretty good savings account for like, in case any emergencies were gonna
Mm-hmm.
happen or stuff like that. Um, and then of course, I did have an emergency. I didn't read the small print on one of my business credit cards that I had, and I went over it was like a preset limit where it's like, just giving an example, right? If up to $1,000, no biggie, but any balance I go over 1,000, I have to pay it in full by the end of whenever that statement is due,
Yeah,
right?
the closing.
So I went over like by like 2K.
Uh-huh.
Um, and that's just because again, I didn't read what the things
Yeah.
were. So I literally like used almost up all of my savings to pay down that. So that kind of wiped me out for a second.
Was that purchase necessary?
I mean, it's paid off now,
Okay. But the
I
purchase that
could
you
I
spent.
could have planned it better
Mm.
to where I could have used a different business credit card that didn't have
Yeah.
that issue. And I had no clue because again, like, a lot of people don't read the freaking small print.
Yeah. That's why, like, later in our segment, we'll talk about strategies,
Yeah.
credit strategies.
And so right now, I'm trying to build back up that savings, but my focus right now is just paying down the debt because it's,
Mm.
at least when it comes to investing and savings, I feel like, it's hard, at least I have my money in a high yield savings account, but it's definitely that 4% that I get is not going to be more than the 29% on
Mm-hmm.
a credit card. So my focus right now is more to knock down that credit card debt. Um,
And as a disclaimer too, none of us are licensed
yeah,
financial advisors. A lot of things we're saying here is
it's
we're
just
sharing
personal experience.
personal experiences, and if you can relate to it, that's great. But honestly, we are learning as we grow up.
Yeah,
And
we're just sharing our mistakes,
exactly,
mistakes and success, right?
exactly. This is something that we're sharing in this platform because I really feel like this is a topic that a lot of people talk about, and whether it's because of cultural, whether because it's something that you're not really proud of, I really think it's something that's very important for people to talk about,
Yeah,
so that we can help each other be successful.
100%. All right, so going into our second point in this segment for today, what are some things that we wish that we knew when we were 18? Um, I guess I'll start with this one, at least kind of going to my mindset when I was younger. It was kind of like, oh, cool, get approved for as much credit as I could. And also I wanted to go for all the credit cards that either had like a really good like cashback promotion where you spend 2K and you get back 500 because it just made sense to spend $2,000 to get back $500.
Free money in your head, right?
Right?
That's why it goes in your free
Yeah.
money.
And then when we started to go on trips and traveling, that's when I started looking at the cards with travel points. Um, which again, is it worth to get in debt for travel points? If you can pay it off, I think it is, right?
Hmm.
If you can't pay it off,
Rethink about it.
rethink about it, right?
Yeah.
Now, in my personal opinion, right? If I'm gonna go to Europe or something and I know I'm gonna spend this money whether I have it or not,
Hmm.
okay, I might take advantage of getting a card and get the points.
Yeah, free
And I'm
benefits.
gonna pay that card over time, right? But to just get a card just to spend money to just get points, um, yeah, I was not thinking very well back then. I don't know, what was your mindset back when you were 18, bro?
When I was 18, I mean, I needed a source of income. And during that time, we were in college. So there's a part of you, and also like my parents at least, they wanted me to focus on school first. But there's another part of me where I do want some side income. Like, yes, my parents gave me some allowances, they gave me some money for a week, but I also wanted fun money. And that's really like when I was in university, I found a part-time job inside the university, and it was something that I enjoyed. It was in the IT space, and honestly, I took it as an opportunity to make extra income and also add a little bit to my resume. Because it was a job where I felt like I could. It's not too stressful, it's not too hard, but it's also something I enjoyed being in the IT space. So that was something where being an 18, getting that money, making money that you never made before. Because in high school I didn't work and I didn't really do like summer jobs. I just summer I just did fun stuff. And obviously my parents supported me up until then. But in college I wanted to at least take some responsibilities, and that's when I started working part time at my university, made some extra income. And with the extra income, yes, I spent it a lot on fun stuff. I was making money, so I'm big into tech. So I bought a little, like, couple of computers and
Yeah.
stuff like that, and also just enjoying it. But then also I learned to save, and that's really where I think those mindset you really have to switch. Is now you're making money, now it's your money that you're spending. You gotta be more strategic on it. And I didn't really save or invest when I was 18 because like I didn't really think about that yet.
Right.
I also had student loans that I had to handle. So I also used that to pay some school supplies, some learning programs if I anything I needed for school, but also for fun money, eating out, hanging out with friends. But then with credit cards, I really didn't get into until post graduation, mainly because I'd say I was also raised in the mindset, credit cards, if you don't know how to handle and manage them, you're just going to sink yourself. And I think that's pretty true. It wasn't really until I developed much more financially of how to handle my finances. So everything I pay with either cash or debit card. So the money would immediately get withdrawn from my account if I spent it. That way I don't spend another person, the bank's money, because I think that definitely that could get you in a hole that might be very hard to get out of. So that's one thing to really be cognizant about when you're young and you start making money, you have more extra income, is that know your boundaries.
Yeah.
And not necessarily, you can, yes, live under your means, but then also have a plan and don't just be buying stuff. And there are some moments where I do have that where I'm going to buy it. I have that opportunity. I'm working hard for my money because again, it's your money. You're working hard for it. Yes, enjoy it, but enjoy it within your means. That's one big thing that I definitely learned. And really another thing is when it comes to credit, always remember that it's not your money that you're spending. Credit is you're spending other banks' money, and that's where they get you is if you're not responsible, they're going to go after you and they're going to get more money from you.
Yeah.
And that's really one big thing that at 18, I think is really important is obviously getting some sort of income and then spending and living within your means, but making sure you spend within your limits, within what you're capable of and what I'd say that's worth it. Because there is this concept that, growing up, I always heard this, buy once, cry once. If you're going to buy something, it's going to be expensive, but at least, you're not going to regret buying it. And you always have to think, the way I think about it strategically back then, when it comes to buying something, if I really want to buy something, I have a mindset where don't buy it yet, wait a month.
Right.
If you still want it, then buy it. If you don't want it, like you save yourself. And that's really where I have to like remind myself if there's something I want and it's significantly expensive, think about it and don't impulse buy it.
Right.
Give it a week, give it 2 weeks. It really depends. Like it really depends on your mindset. Give it a couple weeks, couple days, and if you really do think that you need it, then buy it. But again, don't put it all on credit cards or loans. And I think one thing, especially living, still with your parents at a young age, and especially like during college, is you don't think that you need to pay for housing, lodging, food, and all that, electricity. A lot of that really covered by your parents. But then that's something that I'd say don't be to be cognizant of it. Obviously, your parents are there to support you, and every family is different. But I think one thing is, just because you have extra income, think about if you didn't have the, I'd say, not necessarily privilege, but the luxury of still living with your parents, not having to worry about rent, electricity, food. Think about if you had to pay all those, do you think this purchase is necessary?
Right.
And that's something that I wish when I was younger. There's some purchase where I'm like, yes, I enjoyed it, but now looking at it, did I am I still enjoying it? Was it worth it at that time? Like,
Yeah,
maybe I could have done something else with the money.
I agree with that, bro, because I think little by little, at least for me, once I turned 18, first couple of years of college, I would spend a lot on food at school. Because one, I didn't want to take out more loans from school, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to get like the meal plan or anything, which maybe I should have because I ended up spending the money anyways in food, right? Especially because school, like for me at least, when I get stressed out, anxious, I stress eat.
Mm-hmm.
So I found myself buying a lot of food, and spending like on clothes, like stuff that like even like sometimes I'll go in my closet, bro, and I'm opening and cleaning out stuff. I'm like, dude, I never wore this,
Oh
you
yeah,
know?
I experienced that too.
So that
So,
that happened to me a lot at first, and just like that started creeping up little by little. Taking out the girlfriends and all that when I was younger. Just kind of, I got it. I'll pay for it. It's all good. Or let's go. And and next thing you know, like all of a sudden you in like 2 weeks you spend like $600 and it's like, oh shit, that's how much I get paid in 2 weeks or the whole month sometimes, especially like when I was working part-time or whatnot. So that would just kind of start creeping up. And fortunately, when I went to boot camp and all that, we were getting paid. So that definitely did help me lower some debt. And just kind of also they do teach us a little bit about finances there. So
oh really?
um,
Boot camp?
a little bit, very little. It's just like, because they know people in the military start making money and they start spending like idiots, especially the young guys. So they try their best to like, try to give us
The
some
bare
advice
minimum.
and not go crazy when we start getting paid. Um, let's see, let's go to the third one. So now going into our third segment, talking kind of how we can leverage what we have currently. At least for me, um, I have my through the Navy, through both my military and civilian career. I've got the TSP, which is like our 401k for in the government, which is really nice because they match you up to like 5%. So definitely it's something that
Mm.
you hear everyone in there take advantage of the 5%. And it is a little bit different though because we have the way we can invest our money. It's like in different funds. And if you don't know anything, they just put your account in like the most like risk adverse fund, and like your portfolio grows like
Slowly.
1%, bro.
Yeah. So,
Um, and it wasn't until I started doing my own research that I started looking into the S and I and F fund and G fund and all that stuff, and started mixing my portfolio. And I've had good moments where the stock market was going up pretty well, and
mm,
I was up between 20 to 40%. And of course, when Papa Trump, brought his tariffs, that went down a little, well, quite a bit. But at the same time, for me, like being young, I'm not too worried about that. Like I'm just writing it out. I actually, this is one saying that I've heard a lot is like some of the best performing portfolios are people who passed away and never touched their portfolio
yeah.
because they never panicked or anything. They just let it ride through everything because throughout history it just goes up. And you know, at least I definitely have learned a lot more about having a budget and seeing where my money goes through. So I've used both like Excel and I've used Rocket Money, um, which I know already what's going to discourage a lot of people from doing that kind of stuff. And it's just because it takes time to actually go in, put in all your expenses, look at everything, connecting all your accounts. People just because of that, they're not going to do it. But if you're listening to this, I really hope you do because that to me was very eye opening. I really think everyone should go out of their way at least one day where you sit down and focus, and whether you're doing an Excel sheet or you're using an app, but really just put all your expenses in there because you're gonna see what you're actually spending your money on, and you'll be able to look at what stuff you can take out. Um, but aside from that, like I definitely did play a little bit more around with like crypto back in 2020. And I got in kind of late when the hype was kind of getting over. So I definitely lost money, but that's because also I kind of panic sold I mean, you get in when everyone's like hyping it up, and then it starts to go down, and you panic and stuff like that. Fortunately, I still have some money in there
Mm.
that I just kind of left and I haven't touched. And but now, I'm still in this, but I'm getting more educated on it. I'm not just like following any YouTube guru that says that Bitcoin's gonna go up tomorrow,
Or any hype. Yeah, you
yeah,
never want to fall into that.
not any hype. I'm just following, where the big money is going, what the banks are doing. So for me, I'm definitely more willing to risk a little bit more in my investments and stuff like that.
Especially
And
in this age, I think you can definitely have more of an aggressive mindset
yeah,
because you don't have a lot of dependencies. You don't have a family to raise. You don't have a house loan, mortgage. You don't have all that, and you can be a little more aggressive. And then I guess like that's definitely when I'm older. That's when you start becoming more conservative
yeah.
with your, I'd say, mixture of your finances.
And even me right now, bro, like I already know that the money I have invested, like most of that, I'm gonna end up taking out within the next year or two to pay down my credit card debt.
Okay, just watch out
Um,
for taxes on that.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, hopefully Trump does pass the no tax on U.S. crypto.
Oh,
Then at
really?
least half of my stuff won't be taxable.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes.
Um, but speaking of taxes, we'll get into that too. And this is why I personally think everyone should own some type of business because it does do you a huge solid. I haven't paid taxes in the last 3 years, and I've been getting the last 2 years. I think I've been getting like at least 5K back.
That's really good.
So, but we'll go into a little bit more. But I know you definitely have some different accounts than me. So have you been leveraging what you have?
Yeah, most definitely. I think one of the first ones I started that this is one thing that I really wish I knew sooner was a Roth IRA, a Roth individual account, individual retirement account. That's something I didn't start until I'd say after graduation, and I was starting to make a lot more money. That I really making more money, and do I really need the extra money? I was able to live before I was making like good corporate money, business money, and I was like, let me put some of my money aside into investment, and that's when I looked in the Roth IRA. I think this is something that I need where I can put cash that I'm now making much more of because I graduated, I have a company job, corporate job, and I need to start putting money into that. And that's really where talking about you and your investments, it's really that's something I learned. It's not about timing the market when the dips are and selling when it's at the climax. It's really timing the market, being there early and just putting your money and making sure that you spread it. It's better to get good average across, let's say, monthly, quarterly of investing rather than saying, oh, I'm going to buy it right here because there's just going to be a world event happening, someone's going to like pass a bill. I'd say it's especially if you don't have the time and bandwidth and I'd say overall knowledge of the market. It's really just, hey, put your money in here on a recurring basis, invest in something that's, I'd say, consistent or a managed fund, whether it's like through Fidelity, through Spider, through one of these big mutual funds or general funds, or even a stock. If you want to do individual stock, go for it. But just put your money in there and don't think about timing it. Just focus on having time in the market.
Yeah.
That's something that I definitely wish I learned a little sooner, but obviously I didn't make enough money to have the access to say, hey, I want to invest in this or I want to play with the stock market.
Yeah.
And that's really one thing that I focus on is really retirement account because again, time in the market. If I can start sooner,
Even better.
even
And it
better.
doesn't matter too much if it goes up by crazy or down
Exactly.
because again, you're not gonna panic sell. You
Mhm.
just know that the longer you've been in the market, the better off you're gonna be.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing that I mainly focus on that after doing my YouTube research, I really focus on is anything that tracks the S&P 500.
Hmm.
And from my understanding, S&P 500 is basically a mutual fund that tracks the top like 500 companies in the US and their performance on a somewhat weighted average. But in general, as long as these 500 companies are performing well, you'll have a good benefit over the years.
Yeah.
And the only time that that would you lose money is all 500 companies crash. And at that point, it's apocalyptic realm in the States. So your money, and at that point, money doesn't
At
matter
that point, I'm in Mexico
yeah, at that point, that
on the
money doesn't
beach.
matter. Yeah, and that's really where you have a good mixture of some aggressive, so you can risk a little bit on some stocks that you might, these new companies they just IPO'd, and they might just boom up, or some companies that are pretty cheap right now. So and you have, thinking and you did some minor research saying that, oh, they're going to be booming in a couple of years, then yes, you can put some money in there. But in general, I think having some time in the market, especially one that tracks a majority of the market, or the S&P 500 that tracks the top 500 companies, I think that's definitely something that's very important that I think I leveraged when I was starting to make extra income. And I, rather than have it sit in a bank or sit in cash or spending it or investing in some sort of real estate, which real estate is definitely a different animal, especially here living in SoCal. But I think investment in the stock market is definitely something that a lot of people, with a lot of the platforms that they have nowadays. I mean, back then, like Robinhood didn't exist,
Right.
Coinbase didn't exist, Weibo didn't exist. It was very hard to get into the concept of trading stock markets. And like back then, all I knew from my parents was Fidelity. Fidelity was one of the biggest like brokerages that manages a lot of like employer 401ks, brokerages, and that's what I first jumped into because I know it's somewhat stable. With a lot of these new companies like Robinhood I mentioned, Weibo, Coinbase, like yes, they are based. I still have a mix of really what they function as, but they do allow much more a greater audience of people to jump into the stock market, which I think has definitely changed the game when it comes to trading and to the stock market in general, having a larger audience who might not even have familiarity with the stock market being able to invest, which is definitely has changed the, I'd say, environment of trading and investment in general. But on top of that, one thing that, especially working in a corporate company, some things that I leverage is really the stable income,
Yeah.
having consistent income, not having to worry about, working extra hours, picking up extra shifts. I'm working and I know how much is coming on my weekly basis. So
Yeah.
that makes budgeting much more simpler and much more straightforward so that I know, okay, this is how much I'm gonna make. These are how much I need to spend on a consistent basis. And here's some that are variable, and then also having some money aside for savings. But then also what's great about corporate, and most companies do offer this, is employer matching 401ks
401ks.
or even 403bs if you're a nonprofit. But really leveraging the matching that employees give for 401ks or 403bs, because that's technically free money. And definitely leveraging that is something that I've done. And I'd say one other thing is really looking at the perks of a company that you're going to join or apply for. In general, on top of the base pay that they're going to give you, look at what perks or benefits that that specific company gives, whether it's something different, if it's like a medical company or like a pharmaceutical, they might have different health plans and benefits. And or if it's like a big tech company, they might have RSU, restricted stock units, or other incentives. And really weighing the cons, weighing the pros and cons of the other benefits. Because yes, base salary I think is definitely something that you want to focus on,
Right.
but also look at the other benefits, whether it's monetary or even in general. I'd say any other benefits the company offers. Definitely look into that when you're deciding what to apply for or which job that you want to pursue. And
Yeah.
it's definitely something that I've learned. And I'd say for me, I'm in a stable when it comes to finances, because again, working company, and as long as the company is performing well, you reap the rewards as well of the company, and that really incentivizes you, work hard. And but the thing is that there's always that limit. And
Right.
unlike you,
I don't really have
the
a
sky's the
limit,
limit.
right? Sky's the limit. Yeah, I agree, bro. Because it was nice having that, that stable income, which I still have that for now to the end of September, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I would say, fortunately, at least in my case, having now that I'm trying to go into the entrepreneurship side of the world, having the Navy on my back pocket, right? At least in terms of like insurance and my TSP and all that stuff. I have definitely, once I get off of the government's insurance and all their stuff, I at least have the Navy to fall back on.
Mhm.
And it's actually cheaper for me to have my naval insurance than the one I have through the government, bro. Um, which it kind of pisses me off still that they made me like get off of the other insurance I had before. It's literally like $150 difference
Dang.
per month. Uh, so I will say, as I have that slight advantage that maybe most entrepreneurs don't have starting now because there's a lot of uncertainty. So worst case, I mean, I can't do this now because I have to finish my course. But worst case in the future, if I ever like don't have a business that's succeeding or something, I could always try to go active duty for
Mm-hmm.
a while. And being an officer, I mean, that's good pay.
Oh,
It's
100%.
honestly good pay.
Exactly.
And I think for me, there is definitely a sense of urgency and pressure of like I need to perform, I need to get my stuff together, you know, because I know that there is a stop date for that last paycheck that's stable.
Mm-hmm.
So it's spooky, but I guess what does say? Pressure makes diamonds or something like that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. High
So
pressure.
hopefully, I shine bright like a diamond, right?
Yeah, exactly. But that's really where perseverance, you really have to just do it. And that's something that you can't procrastinate,
Yeah.
really, is finding a job. And uh because like the market is volatile, the job market is volatile, and some companies, depending on where they're at, and especially with a lot of the tariffs that are being passed in with their current government now, it definitely is, I would say risky, but unstable when it comes to job opportunities. They might open it up, but then any company can just close it down if necessary. And that's really where you really need to be strategic, but then also you gotta put yourself out there. You
Yeah.
can't wait for the. I wish it's the case. In most cases, especially for those that don't have much experience, and like even though we've been working for 5+ years, we're still not considered experienced
Super
people.
high experience.
Yeah,
Yeah,
super
I
experienced.
agree.
So like companies aren't going to be reaching out to us again, dependent on you and your circumstances. But there's still like a lot of companies still don't value your experience as much. Even and even your, I say, fresh perspective. Some companies will value it, some won't, and it's a game of really putting yourself out there and seeing what opportunities work for you.
Yeah, I agree. And so now going into our fourth segment, talking about some credit and saving strategies that we found that have worked for us, and I think some of these we'll definitely agree on, and I think we both use them. But at least for building good credit, the biggest thing for me has just I have a really good payment history. I have almost everything on auto pay. And the stuff I don't, it's like I know I don't have it on auto pay, but because maybe I'm trying to make more payments at once or whatever the reason is, I know that I don't have it on auto pay, but I always take care of that. And I've been pretty good at being on top of all my payments, and honestly, just putting everything on automatic, it's just like
Mhm.
is the
It's a no-brainer.
it's the no brainer. There you go.
Because like if you don't put in auto pay, that means you have a mindset that you don't plan on paying it, and
Yeah,
that's pretty bad mindset. And so auto pay is something that I think is, especially if you're gonna be using a bank's money or
right.
other people's money, uh, making sure that you at least guarantee that you're paying it. And
Yeah, and
ideally, you want to pay in full every
yeah,
month. Obviously, there's some cases where you might need to do at least a minimum payment or at
right.
least a little more than minimum payment, which is totally fine. But having that auto pay, because the last thing you want is to have one late payment, because
Yeah,
that
and
will screw you up.
I mean, again, some banks will forgive you and they'll give you a little pass, right, if you're a few days late, but you don't want to miss any payments. And definitely, I think it's really helpful too when you're trying to, create your budget because it's an easy way, even if you're just making the minimum payment, but an easy way for you to know like these are for sure the expenses that I have incurred. Because maybe sometimes it might get a little bit messy if you're trying to go back in and track what payments you made,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like if you're, oh, I made 3 payments to this card or whatnot, and it gets a little bit messy right there. So I'd say in terms of tracking, it makes it a little bit easier. And um, I'd say, we talked a little bit earlier about, taking advantage of some of like the credit, credit card, the points and all that stuff. Um, I definitely have become a little bit more responsible with that lately. Like I said earlier, like if I knew I was going to go on a trip to Europe and I knew I was going to spend anywhere from $4,000 to $10,000 on the whole trip between me and my girlfriend on the trip, I knew that money was going to get spent. And so um, I opened up a credit card, to get the travel bonus and everything. And obviously, I don't have the money to pay off that whole balance at once, but I've been paying it
Hmm.
down. And I feel like in that case, I've gotten a lot better because before it was bad, dude. It was
Hmm.
bad. I was always chasing the bonuses, but then I was just getting into debt,
Or
you
the
know?
promos were 0%
Yeah.
interest for like 20 months. Next thing you know, next month you have to pay interest.
Yeah. And I will say though, for example, some of that stuff it's helpful, right? Learning how to use all that at the right time. When I first got my Kangen water machine, I have the Kangen water up here. One of the ways I made that possible was I opened up a business credit card that was like 0% interest for, I believe it was 12 or somewhere between 12 and 16 months.
Mm.
It was with American Express. And so one, that balance is not on my personal credit. And two, at least for me, it was like, well, I'm gonna make the minimum payments on that, or I split it between 12 months. Um, and I'll be honest, I'm still paying that off a little bit right now because I incurred other expenses and I had to divert my money a little bit. But at least in the moment, and like even up to now, like it's not on my personal credit. So I would say for me, that was a better move than using a regular credit card that I had. Because yeah, it did, put a credit inquiry on my personal credit, but low key, I'd rather take that than having like a even higher credit usage. And I don't know if that's the right thing or not. Again, I'm not a financial advisor, but personally, like this, water business helps me also do write-offs
Mm.
from my salary,
Yeah.
right? So to me, it was worth it because it goes in conjunction with the gym, with health. So it's another business that I can write off. I write off the machine. I write off a lot of whole other stuff. I write off my internet, my car, like the car payment, the car insurance. When I had a gas vehicle, I was writing off gas.
Mhm.
Trying to figure out if I could write off electricity. Um,
Utilities.
Utilities,
Yeah.
right? I'm writing off my cell phone bill. So that's a lot of stuff that you can actually write off. And all of that was enabled because I used a business credit card that was 0%
Mhm.
interest. And it was money I didn't have access to at the moment, but it was something I wanted to make happen. But what kind of has been your experience with that? I know you've been a lot more responsible than me. So
No, it's not really responsible. It's strategic, and that's really where something that I've learned and younger is really being strategic with your credit. Because again, like I mentioned earlier, credit is really your relationship with money and how well you manage it. And again, for me, when I first started off high school, student loans. That was literally the first thing that shows up my credit
yeah,
score, and that was something where I didn't want my parents to really take a big majority of my college and my education
yeah.
because it's an investment, and I want to take some sort of responsibility financially. And obviously, I can't afford all of college tuitions all at once, and that's where again I got into student loans. And I know majority of people, they have mixed feelings about student loans, whether it's good or bad. But honestly, for me,
I
it
would say
was
on the bright side, they're at least pretty low interest.
they are low
Yeah,
interest, especially a lot of the federal ones. I had to do a little bit of the private ones, but not too much, and that's really where in high school, leveraging a lot of scholarships. If
yeah.
you're in high school and you're listening to this, I think that's definitely something where I overlooked because I was like, student loans, it'll just cover everything. But scholarships, and especially in high school, it's free money. You're basically,
Hmm.
whether you're writing an essay or just applying in general, you're basically getting free money. And that's something that I wish I actually, now the lesson learned is really back in high school, really wishing that I looked more into that because there's a lot of free money opportunities where you don't have to work. You could just
Yeah.
apply to it, or write a big essay, and you get free money.
And you know what the problem is? That we're all too lazy to write the essay, bro.
Exactly,
That's
and
the problem.
I totally
I got
agree.
too
That's
lazy to write some essays. I mean,
exactly.
and everyone's different, right?
But now you'd rather write an essay to get free money, right?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I've been looking at some grants for like small businesses,
Yeah.
and that's one of my goals for this upcoming month is to start jumping on top of that
Mm.
stuff. Especially right now that I'm trying to get my schedule together for just the gym and the other business that I'm trying to get into. But what was I gonna say? Um the school loans. I feel you on that, bro. Like sometimes I feel like I have a lot, but then I've talked to other people and they have even more,
Mm-hmm.
right? And fortunately, I think the highest interest I have on any of my school loans is like the 7%, which is
Mm.
not too bad,
Yeah.
right? And this is more maybe some advice for people that are in the military. Um, there is a program out there. It's called SCRA, which is Service Members Credit Relief Act. And this every bank takes care of this differently. I'm still kind of working with each bank that I have a credit card with differently, but basically it's a lot easier if you're active duty because you're on orders. Reservists, it gets a little bit hard and every bank is different. But basically what they do is they'll take down your like your credit cards, they'll reduce the interest rate down to like a 6 or 4% interest rate,
Oh,
which
pretty
is
good.
huge.
Yeah.
I already did it through Capital One. That one has been the easiest one so far. I literally did was submitted my info online on the website, press submit. Like a week or two later, I got notified that I got accepted.
Oh.
I'm not kidding, bro. I don't know if it was this week or last week. I got a check in the mail. They have my start date wrong on there, right? They put that I started the military in 2024,
Huh. Uh-huh.
but so basically they'll give you a check with all the money, like retroactive. I don't know if it's when you started the military or when you it's like kind of like when you got the credit card and how long you've been in the military. And basically they'll give you back a check with all the money that you would have saved if you had that lower interest rate. So I got a check for like $800.
That's pretty good.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, that's reminding. That's
and
leveraging.
that's one bank.
Yeah, exactly.
I have credit cards with like 6 different banks.
How many credit cards do you have?
I got like 12.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
some of them are with my parents, right?
Oh, okay.
Which help. Those were to like increase my what is it?
You're an
The age of
authorized
my
user.
credit.
Yeah, you're authorized user.
So, and those I don't use them. I just have the
Mm.
account.
Yeah.
I definitely don't want to get my parents screwed over.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing that I definitely recommend for all of you in the military to check that out. And also, if you are a recent commissioned officer, there's a program out there from USAA, Navy Federal, where like for example, and this is something that I'm probably gonna do. If you have a lot of high interest debt, you're trying to pay it down quicker, they do offer you loans that are up to I think it's like $20,000 to $30,000 at like a 3% interest rate. And I believe some of them, if I read it correctly, it was like you don't have to make payments or you don't get charged interest, something like that. The first like it was either 3 or 6 months.
Okay.
Obviously,
Fine print.
yeah,
Read
read
the
the
fine
fine
print.
print, go on the website, look it up yourself, right? But that's really cool resources as military that you could use, right? I mean, it's going to be a lot easier to pay down $25,000 at 3% than $25 at 30%.
Mm.
At least that's the way I see that, right? Some people would say, no, I'm not going to take out another loan,
Mm.
which I get it if you're not responsible enough to pay off that, transfer that balance or pay that balance, right? And make sure you make your payments up without racking more debt on your cards.
Mm.
Of course, then maybe that's not a good idea. But if you're responsible enough, that's probably something that would be worthwhile. So what I'm probably gonna do is just cut up all my. No, I'm not gonna cut them up.
Nah, don't do that.
I'm gonna toss them
Hide it. Put it
into the
away.
corners of my room
Yeah.
so I don't touch them or use them. And that's actually that has worked out for me, bro. With like different credit cards, like
Yeah.
once I pay them off, I just
Hide it away.
hide it away.
Exactly. Yeah, and then that's something that you definitely mindset you have to learn early on.
Yeah.
Is really control.
Yeah.
And you need self-control when it comes to credit card, because it's really the mindset. And this is coming from someone who has currently at age 26 has a 800 plus credit score.
Mhm.
I think one thing I definitely leverage is really with credit cards is really still treat it as a debit card, but use it as a tool to build your relationship with money and with the banks. Because right now I only have 4 different credit cards, and honestly, I wish I could honestly live with only 3.
You only have 4?
I only have 4. Yeah. I only have 4. I only have 4. And that's because with credit cards, I don't want too many inquiries.
Right.
But then also, there's no point in a lot of the things that I spend on. I don't need a lot of credit cards because I'd say the first credit card I got when I was making good money already. halfway done with school, and
Yeah.
I was also working part-time already in like
Okay.
a corporate setting, and I was like, I need to start building my credit. And at that point, the only thing my credit history had was student loans, and obviously that's not really good in the eyes of creditors, because they're like,
Right.
this guy has a lot debt. And with student loans, I mean, I was still working part-time in university, but I wasn't making enough money to pay all my student loans, or I was enough to make, a lot of it was deferred, but I still made some payments against the principal, which is good, so I don't pay a lot of interest.
Yeah.
But with credit cards, the way I strategically used it is, if I was going to buy something anyway, like gas, food, or any general thing, if I had in mind was going to buy it with a debit card or with cash, might as well just pay with credit card, and then pay pay it off immediately, or again, wait until the statement closed and pay it off fully.
Yeah.
And that's really how I've been really thinking. And with credit cards, I don't really budget them, because my concept of budgeting is, if I'm going to buy something like food,
It's
gas,
already in your budget.
it's already budgeted, and it's just a matter of I'm charging in my credit card,
And you're
but
gonna
then
pay it off.
I'm going to pay off immediately. And
Yeah.
that's because my first time I used a credit card, I didn't really know how interest rates work, whether it's a year, whether it's a month, whether it's per day. And after spending something and then only paying minimum, because I was like, let me see what minimum looks like, minimum
Yeah.
payment looks like. And I saw the amount of interest I had to pay. I was like, wow, I basically bought something, and now I owe the bank more money.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah,
And they
this is
catch
something.
you with that minimum payment, bro. You're like, oh, I can pay this. that's
Exactly.
okay."
Yeah.
And then it's
gets
not
you.
until you like look in the statement, you're like, it says, oh, how long it would take you to pay off the whole balance. And that's assuming that you don't use the credit card
Anymore.
right?
Exactly.
And it gets kind of crazy, man. And so this kind of, to lead us into our last segment, advice that we do give our 18-year-old selves. What is something that you would tell 18-year-old Roy?
I really have to say is really focus on savings. And even at 18, when a majority of people are still with their parents, and they have the convenience of not having to worry about rent, having to worry much about food, is really start saving first. I think having good savings, and everyone's savings amount ranges, but I really think having something where, if you wanted to buy something, having enough money in the savings to buy that thing again is something that's, I think, very valuable. So if you want to buy something that's $1,000, if you at least have $1,000 in your savings, I think that's something you can buy. If you want to buy something that's $3,000, having something that in your savings that's 3,000, I think having that mindset, I think, is valuable enough. Again, for auto loans, and I also did get an auto loan now once I was working, or I was working a good amount already, so I had money saved up, and that's when I jumped into auto loan, because I wanted to have a step up from student loans, and also then building my history with auto loans. And again, I can't jump into mortgage loans yet, especially with the house prices here in SoCal. But with auto loans, I think it was something that was manageable. Plus, that was something where I wanted to take responsibility on, because at that time, my parents obviously provided me with a vehicle to go to university, to go to work. And at that point, I was making, I'd say, comfortable salary, where I wanted to not have them worry about my transportation. And
Yeah.
I also wanted to enjoy the fruit of my labor. And at that point, I was like, let me enjoy a car that I want to drive. And that's where I got my car. And then I picked up my auto loan. And at that point, my credit was around 750. So I was really pretty good. And that was like 4 years ago. And having the auto loan, that helps build my relationship with, I can financially handle something that's a large purchase. Because obviously, when it comes to like a new auto loan car, the price nowadays is like in the
Crazy.
20 plus, 30 plus $1,000. And that is one way to build your credit, your relationship with money and how you manage it. But then also with savings, I made sure that I had enough money in when it comes to big purchases like that. Having enough money to know that, hey, if I lose my stable income, if a big emergency happens, am I able to pay it off or have some sort of security? And at that point, that's when my mindset switched to, okay, let me have enough money in a liquid form, such as a savings account. I personally have a high yield savings account. Do I have enough money for, let's say, 3 to 6 months of my expenses? And that is really what my initial goal was before I started spending a lot more money, making bigger purchases, getting into like the auto loan, or even like with credit card spending, traveling. That's one thing, making sure that I had enough money in a cash form, that if any emergency happened, or if I lose income for a couple months, then at least I have some security. So definitely savings is a big thing at 18 years old. And then credit responsibility is definitely one thing, is making sure that you have some strategies when it comes to credit cards. And like I only have 4 credit cards, and I really think that's one more than I need. And it's really not falling for a lot of the marketing and promos that a lot of credit card companies do, because
Yeah.
they get you, and they have gotten me too. And that's really, if you're really not educated, or if it's a topic that hasn't really been talked about among your friend group or among your family, that you should educate yourself a little more, whether it's like online research, a lot more YouTubers that are focused on finances and credit cards, listening to them and really understanding what are the pros and cons before you get into it. Because a lot of the promos, that's where they get you. That's where the big marketing, whether it's like 0% interest for the next 21 months. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, I can buy something and not have to worry about paying interest for 21 months. Next thing you know, like we talked about
The
earlier.
21 months come up. Yep.
Exactly. Yeah. And you bought more things on it, and you still have the original amount that you owe.
Yeah.
And that's really one thing. It's really learning to manage money that's not even yours. Because that's something in the world that, especially with a mortgage loan, like, if you want to be a homeowner one day, you're basically putting money on an asset,
Right.
and you're technically, the bank still owns it
Yeah.
if you haven't fully paid for it. Obviously, there's going to be some benefit from it, like home ownership. But you also got to think that that is a commitment, long-term commitment that you're going to be stuck with financially, and you need to be you need to be able to manage it. But then also when it comes to a business, like a business that you're going to run, or even in general, if you're going to work for a business, knowing the concept of managing your money is beneficial in general. Just so that you're not wasting money on unnecessary things. And if you're gonna start your own business, making sure that you're not making a purchase that you think it's gonna have some value for business. In the end, you just lost money in general. And that's something that you really have to balance, and you have to learn. And everyone learns on their own way. And sometimes you learn through loss, and that again, take it as a learning opportunity.
Bro, the one thing I would tell young Roy is good thing you don't have a girlfriend, because at least from my experience, bro, like, I'm not saying women are bad or anything at all,
They're expensive.
but I mean they're expensive. No offense to the ladies watching this, but you guys know it's true. So don't pretend like you don't know it's true. But I definitely, always was in love, right? Had a girlfriend, broke up, had a different girlfriend, whatever, and I was always spending money that really didn't have. And I think that's a big difference between the both of us, is that you didn't make any dumb unnecessary expenses like that from an outside person pressuring you, or not pressuring you, but maybe like, you're like, oh, I want to take him out on a date. And I don't know if you heard of this term, dating debt, which is like a real thing now.
I've heard that.
Right. So that's one thing I definitely like to all the young people out there, and to my younger self, like, dude, relax a little bit. Take it easy on the spending with the girl and everything. You guys don't need to be eating at fancy restaurants or nothing. Especially if you're working like a summer job or something. Like, if you don't have anything established, don't acting like a baller if you're not a baller. And also, like, definitely, educate yourself soon. And if you want to get, into the stock market, stuff like that, find a good coach, find someone that really educates you, so you're not making emotional decisions, because that's how you lose money. And what else would I tell myself? Be patient. Be patient. At least, especially, like, I've always liked having a car, and I switch cars pretty often. I've leased, I've bought and sold the car. And at least this last time, like, for a whole year before my lease was up, I was like doing my research, looking up at, how to negotiate. Am I the best negotiator? No. But, how to negotiate, how to know when, you're kind of getting bamboozled or not. Did I get bamboozled? I don't know. Maybe I didn't. And seeing what stuff is worth, putting down when, you're trying to get a car. Because at least my car right now, I ended up getting it at 0% interest, and part of it was a car that I never would have thought, like, the year before that I was going to buy that car. I was looking for like a truck or something else. So also, like, just being flexible, and like, knowing that you're young, and that, you'll have time to get the car that you really want to get, you know, like sometimes you gotta try to be smarter and get a better deal. Um, because so there's another car that I got for my on my own for the first time that I definitely once I looked at the back of it, I was like, damn, I think I am paying too much for the car that it is. Um, and I would also tell myself to surround yourself with people who are educated in the areas that you want to learn. You know, having relationship with a guy that owns a State Farm office, I've learned a lot of in terms of insurance for your car, whole life insurance. I would also say get life insurance when you're young if you can afford it, right? If it fits into your budget.
Yeah. Not
Because
really term. Don't get term
yeah,
when
yeah,
you're young.
I don't think it's term. Term is like when you're old and
Yeah.
you just need to make sure you got some money to pay for the funeral.
And if you have
That's how I see it.
dependents,
Yeah,
you have dependents too.
if you have dependents, but whole life is definitely a lot cheaper when you're younger, and you can get like a bigger limit. So that
It's
was
another
nice.
vehicle of investment.
Yeah,
Outside of the stock market, it's another vehicle for investment, and I think that's definitely where not
and it's
having all your
tax free
eggs.
too.
Exactly, not having all your eggs in one basket and diversifying your
Yeah,
portfolio when it comes to retiring, but then also eventually streams of income when you're older.
and that just ties into like being educated when you're young. Like before you get into anything, just do your research, get information. And I know it's exciting when you're young to want to like jump into something, and they might get you on the first thing that they show you, but that's very important, being patient. And lastly, I would definitely say, like I would tell myself, start your own business, because I truly believe that everyone should have their own business to some sort. And the reason I'm saying that is because, as I said earlier, like I haven't paid anything in taxes lately. The last 2 years, I got at least $5,000 back. And that's because I started educating myself in how to take tax deductions through owning a business, right? And I've done that through the training business and through the canning water business, because they're both businesses that I run from home, right? I pay a rent at the gym, and the stuff I use is actually towards the business, right? I gotta use if I'm gonna connect with people, network people, whether it's on Kangen, whether it's trying to get more clients, I gotta use my phone. To use my phone or computer at home, I need internet, right? To go train, to go meet with people, help them sample water, whatever it is, I need a drivable vehicle, right? If I'm gonna go have dinner with a friend and we talk about business, whether it's the gym, whether it's water, whether it's whatever it is, that's a tax write-off, right? That's the only reason I invite my friends out to eat, because I get to write it off, and they pay me half of it.
And we actually talk about business.
And we talk about business. We actually do. And like for my birthday, we're gonna go to the Padres game. I put my card down for everyone's tickets, but because it's gonna be a write-off. Now, are my buddies gonna pay for their ticket because it's my birthday? Yeah, they are. Are they gonna buy me a drink? Probably. Am I probably gonna let them borrow my card to buy me a drink? Probably. I'm gonna get everything written off as much as I could, but I once you learn how to like really leverage tax write-offs, it's a huge game changer, and that's why you know I think for me it just has been life changing being able to run my own business and doing that in conjunction with having a regular salary job, um, because I would say it saved me a lot of money. And this is bad practice because I never set aside any of my income from the gym for taxes. I never did, but I was just because that's how I was assuming that I was gonna get money back, which I did, thankfully, right? But I'm not saying you should do that. But that's how confident I am in like how much I've learned to deduct stuff and just keep track of all my expenses. And that's something that you can do with really any business that you can run from home. Something as you think as dumb as selling water. Some people are like, why would I ever want to do that? Why would I ever want to own like a device from a medical company or be an affiliate from another company? Dude, I got $5,000 back because of that.
Yeah.
And some people just don't realize that. So I would say definitely any kind of small business that you can run from home, dive into it. You might not make a lot of money from it at the beginning, but if it's going to put more money in your pocket at the end of the year, especially during tax time, I think it's worth it.
Plus, if it's something you're passionate about, like
Yeah.
fitness and health, Doesn't hurt,
And
especially in this age.
I mean, I'm excited, bro, because I got my mom to join on the business side for
Mm-hmm.
Kingan, and so I'm gonna teach her how to start writing off her expenses.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and she drives a lot.
Mm, yeah.
She has her car payments, she has her insurance payments. She pays for different other utilities here at home. So I'm excited to help her out because I know my parents are always trying to find a way to not pay so much on taxes. And she might have to thank me later next year when she gets maybe some money back from her taxes.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's kind of for me. Those are the lessons that I've learned right now that I would tell my younger self, and that I would tell any of my friends really. Especially because we both made mistakes, but we've learned from them. I think I've made more mistakes than Roy, but
No. But talking about in the segment of dating debt and talking about spending money on girls, so add in the short. But uh, in regards to you're talking about, spending money on a woman, and especially if you're dating, I think one thing that you really need to learn as a young man, and if your mother's still around, I think one thing is treat her because
yeah,
she's a woman that will never leave your side and will love you unconditionally. And that's something that you have to learn before you spend money on a girl that you're dating or making a big purchase, someone that you've been dating for a long time. Spend money on your mother first because she brought you to this world and she loves you unconditionally.
so buy her a Louis Vuitton
Yeah.
bag in Monaco.
Yep, exactly. That was one of my biggest purchases that I first made, making good money, and I think it's something I don't regret because my mom still loves me, and I mean, uh, being able to buy someone that
Yeah,
has been, I'd say, taking care of you for your whole life, I think is definitely a valuable thing. And even if,
I
even if it's a small bag or purse,
I
it's
agree, bro.
something.
I agree because
All the moms will like that.
we well, one, I hope my mom doesn't listen to this because now she's gonna expect the Louis Vuitton bag. But also like we didn't tell my grandma that we were getting the machine for her because
Oh,
my grandma knew how much the machine is, and when I told her when I got to the house and I unboxed it, she like started crying because like she's like I didn't want you guys to spend that, but for me and my mom, it's our way to give back to her.
yeah, and investment in her health. I
Yeah,
think that's one
and it's
big
an
thing too.
investment in her health.
Yeah.
So that's something that's really cool, and I agree with you. And now I gotta start saving up for a Louis Vuitton bag.
Yeah, for your mom, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely treat it on women. I mean, yes, treat your significant other, your loved ones that you're dating or in a relationship with. But first, spend it on someone that's been there since your side the whole time, and all the moms would appreciate that. I
yeah,
think that's
I
one
agree.
thing.
So I just want to thank all of the viewers here that have joined us today. I hope you guys got something out of this segment today. And I appreciate Roy for being here.
No worries. Thanks for having me
He
again.
he always keeps me on my feet. Keeps me grounded and is a voice of reason. Whenever I'm trying to make a decision, and I try same thing. I try to be his voice of
You
reason
are.
sometimes.
You are.
So
Yeah.
I know you're not gonna move to the Philippines. And
Next episode.
yeah, so stay tuned to the next episode. We'll definitely bring in more guests and just try to get different perspectives with other entrepreneurs, other people who have a 9 to 5 job, but they're really killing it. And because they took the right steps when they were younger. Anything that you guys want to learn, hear about, go ahead and drop it in the comment section. I want this to serve all of you who are trying to like just learn from people's experience. And yeah, I appreciate y'all for listening. See you guys in the next episode.
Peace.